Hi, I'm Ben Llewellyn and I'm looking today at Wales and Scotland, not what makes them similar or the same, but what makes them different. In this 4-part series, I'll be looking at Wales and Scotland's identities through their languages and how radically different they are. I'll show you how since at least the Ice Age, Wales and Scotland's landscapes have formed in contrast. We will see how separate legal systems created different modern democracies. And we will delve into the Renaissance, in which Wales and Scotland took journeys which could not be further apart. If you're new here, why not subscribe so you can catch the entire series? And if you leave a like, I'd really appreciate it. If you're just coming into the series in this episode, here's a link to my last episode here. When it comes to the law, Wales and Scotland have different legal systems. They also have devolved governments with powers reserved to them from the British government, and what they control is different, and how they got these powers as well is different. Let's start with the legal systems, which are different between them. Scots law emerged out of oral legal traditions from various peoples which compose the makeup of present-day Scotland. It was Angles, Britons, Scotty, Picts, Gaels, all these elements fused together to make this new legal system, which by the 12th century was codified. We have texts that have survived down to us from that. And as Scotland expanded and occupied more present-day Scotland, it became the law of a kingdom. As Scotland was independent, the legal system changed a lot. It incorporated a bit of French law and Roman law on occasion when the native Scots law did not have a proper defense for certain new innovations in legal systems. So present-day Scottish law does have some faint Roman echoes, which makes it very different to English common law. Wales, on the other hand, was codified under Hywel in the 10th century and spread to different Welsh kingdoms. But as it was a conquered country, the English law was imposed upon it. They did have the laws of Hywel. They were not really incorporating Roman and French law per se. It was a native tradition arisen out of the various Welsh kingdoms, and as it was pushed out and the English law was put in place, it really was a law put upon Wales by a foreign country. However, it has evolved slowly a Welsh accent of that common law. Scotland never had quite the same position of law, even after unifying with England and the Acts of Union in 1707. It kept a lot of its legal codes and definitions for property rights and so on, which was markedly different from Wales. Wales lost its native legal traditions. What this did as well is we lost many Welsh names for things and people, even in some cases, because the law being introduced was in the English language and not in Welsh. In Scotland, on the other hand, you did see this legal system push out Scottish Gaelic language in favour of Scots, but that's another story. What this did as well is it gave Scottish people in Scotland a legal profession, an elite profession, something which accumulated economic and social power within Scotland. Because if you're a solicitor or a barrister, you make a decent living, you earn a lot of money. For the Welsh to become certified in those professions, they had to go to England. And the basis for that legal structure, common law and so on, was based upon English jurisprudence. And so the Welsh people who aspired to that profession had to leave Wales, and this had a lasting impact for subsequent generations, as it still does today, upon the aspirations of upwardly mobile people. Now, Wales now is beginning to develop some laws of its own, but it's a relatively recent concept since devolution began in 1999, really. Even though you had a few gradual introduction of laws before then and the Welsh office, it wasn't anything significant. Recently, both the Welsh and Scottish nations voted to have devolution. Scotland had a parliament. Wales had an assembly which has recently been upgraded to a Senedd, and this was with the consent of the Welsh people via 2 referendums. So the people of these nations are very supportive of their devolutionary powers and having their own laws given to them, but they do have different areas in which they have control. So Wales has fewer areas in which it is responsible, over which it has control, than Scotland does. The Scottish government controls health, education, almost full taxation, not quite, but almost, justice, consumer rights and advice, rural affairs, housing, and the environment. One thing that makes Welsh unique again is that one of the things that it has control over is the Welsh language, which is a boost to our native language. I'm living in Wales, so I'm very proud that our Senedd has powers over that. It can also legislate for health, housing to an extent. It has very, very limited taxation powers, which have not really been used. It has education powers. Overall, its powers are much more limited than Scotland, though they have been increased, and it looks as though that trend should continue because that appears to be what the Welsh people want. But there's a difference, a marked difference between Wales and Scotland with what they control and what the British government controls. Wales controls laws regarding local government, the environment. Agriculture is a big one because the Welsh economy is so dependent upon agriculture. It really does need to. And it does have the right to economic investment under its own guidance, but that's curtailed because it doesn't have the right to change the taxation regarding how that is structured. Wales tends to lead the way in laws regarding animal welfare and rights. Scotland tends to be more involved in targeted programs to curtail alcoholism and urban-related poverty. So they're using their laws in a very different sense, and it comes from the fact that they have a very different culture and society, and they need different laws to reflect that. The location of these 2 legislatures, or Parliament in the Scottish sense and Senedd in the Welsh sense, Senedd is being used more often. The location of these 2 parliaments are quite different. The Senedd was put in Cardiff Bay, a rejuvenated area that had fallen into decay, and it was used to renovate the area and create a new prosperity. The Scottish Parliament, however, is at the foot of the Mile, the ancient historic royal avenue of the capital of the Scottish kingdom. Now, the Scottish Parliament does have a bit of a look like an outdated 1990s cinema, and the Welsh Senedd does definitely have a bit more dignity in its sense of aesthetic style, but they're very different in their locations, and where your Parliament or Senedd is has an impact upon your psychology. The Welsh Senedd is about renewal, a renewed democracy, while the Scottish Parliament is about continuance. And the tradition along that mile below St. Giles Cathedral, one of the most beautiful places that I've ever been, certainly is St. Giles Cathedral, and it was the ecclesiastical centre of the Kingdom of Scotland, so that continuation of history in the legal sense is very important for the Scottish people, whereas Wales had no continuation in the legal sense, so it's creating something new, like a phoenix. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next episode of this series.